Admiral Vex Thara adjusted his 4 eyes with practiced annoyance as he stared at the holographic display floating before him. The massive command deck of the Dominion warship Eternal Conquest hummed with the usual cacophony of beeping instruments, chattering officers, and the occasional dramatic sigh from someone who'd just spilled their nutrition gel on their uniform. "So, let me get this straight," Vex Thara said, his voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that could corrode hull plating. "You're telling me that our next target is a planet inhabited by creatures called humans." Commander Zilk-Nar, a particularly nervous specimen of the Kethari race, bobbed his elongated head enthusiastically. His 3 arms gestured wildly as he spoke, making him look like he was conducting an invisible orchestra of panic. "Yes, Admiral. The planet is called Earth, and according to our intelligence reports, it's populated by bipedal mammals who have somehow managed to develop space travel, despite having only 2 eyes and no natural armor plating." The bridge erupted in what could only be described as alien laughter. It sounded like a combination of grinding metal, squeaking hinges, and someone gargling mouthwash made of gravel. "2 eyes?" Lieutenant Kreck's Pole wheezed between fits of laughter. "How do they even see behind them? Do they have to turn their entire heads like some primitive predator?" "Oh, it gets better," Zilk-Nar continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "They also have soft, pink skin with no natural protection, and they leak salt water from their eyes when they experience emotional distress." Admiral Vex Thara raised one of his many eyebrows. "They leak. Are they defective?" "Apparently, it's a normal biological function. They call it crying." Our xenobiologists are baffled. The laughter continued to ripple across the bridge like a contagious disease. Even the normally stoic navigation officer, a hulking creature called Brax Tum, was making a sound that resembled a cement mixer having a seizure. "Admiral," interrupted communications officer Nixara, her voice cutting through the hilarity like a plasma blade through butter. "I'm receiving an incoming transmission from High Command." The massive holographic display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Thane Drix. His scales glittered with an oily sheen, and his 6 arms were folded in a way that suggested he was either deep in thought or planning to strangle someone. "Ah, Admiral Vex Thara," Thane Drix rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. "I trust your fleet is ready for the invasion of this Earth?" "Of course, Supreme Commander," Vex Thara replied, straightening his posture. "Though I must say our intelligence reports suggest this will be less of an invasion and more of a, how do the humans put it, a walk in the park." "Excellent. Our analysts predict total conquest within 72 standard hours. These humans have been isolated on their single planet for their entire existence. They have no experience with real warfare, no understanding of galactic politics, and frankly, no idea what's coming for them." Commander Zilk-Nar leaned forward eagerly. "Supreme Commander, if I may, our scouts report that humans actually engage in combat with each other. They've been fighting wars on their own planet for millennia." Thane Drix's laugh was like the sound of an avalanche made of broken glass, fighting among themselves. "How quaint, like children squabbling over toys. I'm sure their primitive weapons will be quite effective against our quantum disruption cannons and reality warping shields." "There's more, sir," Zilk-Nar continued, his enthusiasm growing. "They use projectile weapons that fire small metal pellets, and they still employ explosive devices that require chemical combustion." "Chemical combustion?" Vex Thara repeated, his voice rising in disbelief. "Are you telling me they still use fire to kill each other?" "Yes, Admiral. Fire, like they're still living in caves." The bridge crew dissolved into another fit of laughter. Even the ship's AI, a sophisticated program called Alex 9, chimed in with what sounded suspiciously like mechanical chuckling. "Perhaps," suggested Lieutenant Kreck's Pole, wiping tears of laughter from his optical sensors, "we should bring some primitive clubs as backup weapons. You know, just to make it fair." "Or swords," added Brax Tum. "I hear they used to fight with sharpened metal sticks." Supreme Commander Thane Drix waved a dismissive hand. Enough entertainment for now. Admiral, you have your orders. The invasion begins in 6 standard hours. You do try to keep some of them alive for the slave markets. I hear bipedal mammals are quite popular as exotic pets in the Centauri system. Of course, Supreme Commander, though I must ask, should we bother with our full battle formation? It seems rather excessive for such a primitive species. Use minimal force, Admiral. We wouldn't want to accidentally vaporize the entire planet before we can properly catalogue their resources. Besides, it would be embarrassing if our war historians recorded that we needed our entire fleet to defeat a species that still uses fire. As the transmission ended, Admiral Vex Thara turned to his tactical officer, a squat creature called Grunt Hawk, whose idea of strategy involved hitting things until they stopped moving. Grunt Hawk, prepare the fleet for standard planetary subjugation protocol. Be minimal shielding, standard weapons only. No need to waste energy on advanced defenses. Sir, shouldn't we at least scan for potential threats? Standard military doctrine suggests. Grunt Hawk. Vex Thara interrupted, his voice patient in the way that suggested he was explaining something to a particularly slow child. We are about to invade a planet populated by creatures who leak salt water when they're upset and still use fire to solve their problems. What exactly are you worried about? Well, sir, they do have space travel capabilities, and our long-range sensors have detected some unusual energy signatures in their orbital facilities. Unusual energy signatures? Vex Thara's tone suggested he was barely containing his amusement. Let me guess, they've discovered how to harness lightning. Or perhaps they've learned to split atoms. How terrifyingly primitive. Commander Zilknar consulted his data tablet. Actually, sir, they have discovered atomic fission and fusion. They've even built weapons using these principles. Atomic weapons. Vex Thara paused for a moment, then burst into laughter so violent it made his armor rattle. They're still using atomic weapons. What's next? Are they going to throw rocks at us? To be fair, sir, Zilknar said, they throw rocks very accurately. They have something called kinetic bombardment, where they drop tungsten rods from orbit. Tungsten rods? Vex Thara was now laughing so hard he had to hold onto his command chair for support. They drop metal sticks from space. Oh, this is rich. Do they also plan to defeat us with strongly worded letters? The bridge crew was in complete hysterics now. Even the normally professional Nixara was making sounds that resembled a malfunctioning translator attempting to process a comedy routine. Admiral, wheezed Brax Tum, perhaps we should prepare some bandages in case they try to give us paper cuts. Or maybe we should wear our dress uniforms, added Krex Pole. Since this is apparently going to be more of a parade than a battle. Admiral Vex Thara wiped tears from his eyes and tried to compose himself. All right, let's be professional about this. Even if they are hilariously primitive, we still have a job to do. He turned to his sensor operator, a multi-tentacled creature called Skrix Nal. Give me a detailed scan of their defensive capabilities. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with, even if it's just for the entertainment value. Scanning now, Admiral. Skrix Nal's tentacles danced across his console with practiced efficiency. I'm detecting approximately 12,000 artificial satellites in various orbits around the planet, ranging from communication relays to what appears to be, wait, that can't be right. What is it, Skrix Nal? Sir, I'm reading some of these satellites as weapon platforms. They appear to be armed with high-energy particle beams, kinetic interceptors, and what looks like miniaturized fusion warheads. The laughter on the bridge began to die down as Admiral Vex Thara frowned. Fusion warheads? On satellites? Are you certain your equipment is functioning properly? Running diagnostics now, sir. All systems are operating within normal parameters. Additionally, I'm detecting a significant military presence on the planet's surface. They appear to have divided themselves into approximately 200 separate nation-states, each with their own military forces. 200 separate militaries. Vexthara's amusement was fading rapidly. That seems excessive for a single planet. It gets more interesting, sir. I'm detecting underground facilities, hardened bunkers, and what appears to be a global network of early warning systems. They also have mobile launch platforms for their atomic weapons, and they appear to be, sir, they're submarines. Submarines? What are submarines? Underwater vessels, Admiral. They've militarized their oceans. The bridge had gone quiet now, save for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Admiral Vexthara stared at the tactical display, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Skrixnal, are you telling me that these primitive humans have not only weaponized their space around their planet, but they've also weaponized their oceans? Yes, sir, and their land masses, and their skies. Sir, I'm detecting aircraft capable of atmospheric and limited space flight, armed with various projectile and energy weapons. Commander Zilk now cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. If they have this level of military organization, nonsense. Vexthara snapped, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. They're still using primitive technology. Atomic weapons are thousands of years old. Our shields can deflect anything they throw at us. Sir, Skrixnal interrupted, his voice carefully neutral. I'm detecting something else. There appear to be humans in space, not just on satellites, but in what looks like armed space stations. Armed space stations. Vexthara's voice rose an octave. How many? Approximately 57, sir, and they're not alone. I'm detecting what appears to be a lunar base and several facilities on their system's fourth planet. They've colonized other worlds. Zilknar's 3 arms were shaking now. But our intelligence said they were confined to their home planet. Our intelligence, Vexthara said through gritted teeth, appears to have been somewhat outdated. Lieutenant Krex Pole raised a tentative hand. Admiral, perhaps we should contact High Command and request additional ships. Additional ships. Vexthara's laugh was bitter now. For a species that leaks salt water and uses fire, what would that look like in the official reports? Better than explaining why we were defeated by creatures who cry when they're sad, Braxton muttered. Defeated? Who said anything about being defeated? Vexthara's voice rose dangerously. We are the Dominion. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We are not going to be stopped by some bipedal mammals with primitive technology. Sir, Nixara called out, her voice tight with concern. I'm receiving multiple incoming transmissions from the target planet. They appear to be hailing us. Hailing us? Vexthara blinked in confusion. They know we're here. It would appear so, sir. The transmission is coming from multiple sources. They seem to be welcoming us? Welcoming us. Zilknar's voice cracked. They're welcoming an invasion fleet. Put them through, Vexthara ordered, his mind racing. Let's see what these primitive humans have to say. The main display crackled to life, showing the image of a middle-aged human with graying hair and a surprisingly calm expression. He was wearing what appeared to be a simple blue uniform with various insignia. Greetings, the human said, his voice carrying an odd mixture of formality and amusement. I am Admiral Sarah Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, I'd like to welcome you to our solar system. The bridge of the eternal conquest fell silent. Admiral Vexthara stared at the human, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. You're welcoming us, he managed to say. Of course, Admiral Martinez replied, her expression never changing. We've been expecting you for quite some time. Your invasion fleet is quite impressive, by the way. Very traditional. Traditional? Vexthara's voice was barely a whisper. Oh yes, the standard arrive with overwhelming force and demand surrender approach. We've seen it before. It's been about, 3 months since the last time someone tried it. The last time? Commander Zilknar squeaked. The hegemony of Praxis. Nice folks, really. They're running a small mining operation in the asteroid belt now. Very peaceful work. They seemed to enjoy it. Admiral Vex Thara felt something cold settle in his stomach. What happened to their fleet? Admiral Martinez smiled, and for the first time, Vex Thara noticed that her smile didn't reach her eyes. Oh, they're still intact. Most of them, anyway. We're not barbarians, Admiral. We simply convinced them that mining was a more profitable venture than invasion. Convinced them? Well, after we disabled their weapon systems, neutralized their shields, and demonstrated our own capabilities, they were quite reasonable about the whole thing. We even threw them a going-away party. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Admiral Vex Thara looked around at his crew, seeing his own growing horror reflected in their faces. I believe there may have been some miscommunication, he said finally. We were under the impression that your species was primitive. Primitive? Martinez laughed, and the sound was not entirely pleasant. Admiral, we've been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We've had weapons of mass destruction for over a century. We've been in space for almost as long. What exactly gave you the impression we were primitive? The report said you use fire and projectile weapons. Oh, we do. We use everything, Admiral. Fire, projectiles, energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, antimatter warheads, quantum disruption fields, reality anchors, temporal displacement devices. We're very thorough when it comes to creative destruction. Vex Thara felt his legs give out as he sank into his command chair. Just the basics, really. Nothing fancy. We mostly use them for defensive purposes. Hard to invade a planet when your fleet keeps getting scattered across different time periods. This is impossible. You're just one species on one world. Admiral. We're on one world. We've been expanding for quite some time now. Haven't you noticed our colonies? Colonies? 17 star systems and counting. We're very good at making friends, Admiral. And even better at making enemies regret their choices. Admiral Vex Thara looked at his tactical display, seeing the red icons that had appeared around his fleet. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Admiral Martinez, he said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through him, what exactly are you proposing? Oh, I think you know, Admiral. The same thing we proposed to the hegemony, the Zephyrian Empire, the collective of Korth, and the 12 other species who thought humans were just a myth. And that is... Admiral Martinez's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed far too sharp for a creature that supposedly leaked salt water when upset. Surrender. Unconditionally. Immediately. And maybe we'll let you live long enough to appreciate just how unprimitive we really are. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Conquest in stunned silence. Admiral Vex Thara stared at the blank screen, his mind reeling. Admiral. Commander Zilknar whispered. What are your orders? Vex Thara looked at his tactical display, at the thousands of red icons surrounding his fleet, at the readings that showed weapon signatures he didn't even recognize. I think, he said slowly, we may have made a slight miscalculation. The bridge alarm began to sound and Nick Serra's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral, incoming missile launch from the planet's surface. Estimated time to impact 30 seconds. Raise shields. Vex Thara commanded. Please return fire. Shields at maximum, sir. Weapons armed and ready. The first missile struck the Eternal Conquest like the fist of an angry god. The shields, designed to withstand the most advanced weapons in the known galaxy, flickered and died in an instant. The second missile tore through the hull as if it were made of paper. Impossible. Grunthawk screamed. Nothing can penetrate our shields. Apparently, Admiral Vex Thara said, watching his instrument panels explode around him, we still have a lot to learn about impossibility. The third missile never came. Instead, the ship was suddenly filled with a strange blue light and every weapon system on the ship simply stopped working. What's happening? Zilknar demanded. I believe, Vex Thara said, his voice eerily calm, we just discovered why humans are supposedly just a myth. The lights went out, and in the darkness, Admiral Vex Thara could hear the sound of his crew crying. Salt water, it seemed, was not exclusively a human trait after all. The emergency lighting flickered back to life aboard the Eternal Conquest, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Admiral Vex Thara found himself staring at his reflection in a cracked display screen, wondering how everything had gone so spectacularly wrong in the span of 3 minutes. "Status report," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "All weapons systems are offline," Grunt Hulk reported, his usual confidence replaced by something that sounded suspiciously like whimpering. "Shields are down, life support is operating at minimum power, and Admiral, our entire fleet is in the same condition." "The entire fleet?" Vex Thara's voice cracked like a teenage Kethari going through molt season. "Yes, sir. All 437 ships. It's completely disabled. Whatever they hit us with, it was simultaneous and surgical." Commander Zilknar was frantically working at his console, his 3 arms moving in patterns that suggested he was either trying to restore systems or attempting some form of interpretive dance. "Admiral, I'm detecting boarding pods approaching from multiple vectors. They're not using standard docking procedures." "Boarding pods." Vex Thara straightened up, some of his military training finally kicking in. "How many?" "Approximately 2,000, sir. They appear to be small, single-occupant vessels moving at speeds that should be impossible for their size." 2,000. Lieutenant Krex Pole's optical sensors were spinning wildly. "But we have shields, armor plating, automated defense systems." Brax Tum corrected grimly. "We had those things. Now we have fancy metal walls and the desperate hope that humans are feeling merciful today." The ship shuddered as the first boarding pod made contact, then another, then what felt like 100 more, each impact sending vibrations through the hull that made Vex Thara's teeth ache. "They're cutting through our hull," Skriksnal reported, his tentacles trembling as they worked his controls. "Multiple breach points. They're using some kind of plasma cutting technology that slices through our composite armor like it's soft cheese." Plasma cutting. Vex Thara was beginning to sound like a broken recording device. "But our armor is rated against plasma weapons up to Class 7. "Apparently, sir, they didn't get the memo about our ratings." The first breach alarm began to sound, followed by another, then another, until the bridge was filled with a symphony of warnings that would have made a dying space whale proud. "Intruder alert on decks 5 through 12, Nixara announced, her voice maintaining its professional calm despite the circumstances. "They're moving through the ship at an alarming rate. And Admiral, they're not killing anyone." "Not killing anyone?" Vex Thara blinked in confusion. "What are they doing?" "From what I can determine, they're simply disabling our crew, stunning them, restraining them, and moving on. It's almost like they're being polite about it." "Polite invaders." Zilknar's voice rose to a pitch that would have made a Centauri soprano jealous. "What kind of species politely invades a ship?" "The kind that's confident enough to take prisoners instead of corpses," Brax Tum muttered. The bridge doors suddenly hissed open, and Admiral Vex Thara found himself face to face with his first human in person. The creature was smaller than he'd expected, wearing what appeared to be form-fitting armor that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. The helmet was transparent, revealing a face that was surprisingly young and amused. "Admiral Vex Thara, I presume," the human said, stepping onto the bridge with casual confidence. "I'm Captain Rebecca Stone, 1st Marine Assault Division. Please don't make any sudden movements. My armor's targeting system is feeling a bit trigger-happy today." You're just one person," Vex Thara stammered. "One person per boarding pod, yes, we find it more efficient than sending large groups. Less crowded, better maneuverability, and frankly, we each have enough firepower to handle a ship this size on our own." "That's impossible. This ship has a crew of 3,000. Captain Stone shrugged. "Had a crew of 3,000. Now it has a crew of 3,000 very confused prisoners and one increasingly nervous admiral who's about to make a very important decision." She gestured to her wrist, where a small device was displaying what appeared to be a countdown timer. You have approximately 12 minutes to surrender your fleet before Phase 2 begins. Phase 2? Vexthara's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, you don't want to see Phase 2, Admiral. Phase 1 was us being nice. Phase 2 is us being creative. And trust me, you really don't want to see what happens when humans get creative with warfare. Commander Zilknar stepped forward, his 3 arms raised in what he probably thought was a threatening gesture. You're outnumbered. 1 human against an entire bridge crew. Captain Stone turned to look at him, and her expression was so pitying that Vexthara actually felt sorry for his second-in-command. Commander, I'm wearing a Mark VI assault suit that can withstand direct hits from antimatter weapons. I have enough firepower built into this armor to level a city block. And I've been trained since childhood to fight creatures that are bigger, stronger, and more numerous than I am. She paused, tilting her head slightly. Also, I just want to point out that you're all crying right now, like visibly weeping. It's making this whole threatening gesture thing a lot less effective. Vexthara looked around his bridge and realized she was right. His entire command crew was indeed leaking salt water from their optical sensors, just like humans supposedly did when they were upset. We're not crying, he protested weakly. Admiral, you have tears running down your face right now. It's actually kind of endearing. Back home we'd call this a stress response. Here I guess we'd call it Tuesday. The countdown timer on her wrist beeped ominously. 11 minutes, Admiral. I strongly suggest you contact your fleet commanders and discuss the benefits of immediate surrender. And if we refuse? Grunthawk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Stone's smile was the kind of expression that probably gave nightmares to professional nightmare givers. Well, that would be unfortunate. You see, Admiral Martinez was being quite generous when she offered you the mining job. Most species don't get that option. What happens to most species? Vexthara asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. They get to experience the full spectrum of human creativity in warfare. Did you know we once defeated an entire star empire by convincing their computers to play music at frequencies that drove their crews insane? Or the time we ended a war by programming their food replicators to only produce Brussels sprouts? Brussels sprouts. Terrible vegetable. Tastes like sadness and regret. Very effective psychological warfare. The enemy surrendered after 3 days just to make it stop. Zilknar was backing away from the human, his 3 arms now shaking uncontrollably. You're monsters. Monsters? Captain Stone looked genuinely hurt. That's not very nice, Commander. We prefer creative problem solvers. For example, right now I'm solving the problem of how to convince a hostile alien fleet to surrender without actually having to kill anyone. By threatening us. By demonstrating superior capability and offering alternatives to extinction. It's actually quite civilized if you think about it. Much better than our old approach. What was your old approach? Vexthara asked, though he was beginning to suspect he really didn't want to know. We used to just blow things up first and ask questions later. But then we realized that was wasteful. Dead enemies can't learn from their mistakes, can't contribute to society, and can't spread the word about how very unwise it is to attack humans. The countdown timer beeped again. 10 minutes, Admiral. I should mention that Phase 2 involves some rather unpleasant modifications to your ship's gravity systems. Ever experienced combat in fluctuating gravity fields? No. It's not fun. Imagine trying to fight while the floor keeps becoming the ceiling, and the ceiling keeps becoming the floor, and occasionally gravity decides to push you sideways into a wall. We call it the cosmic washing machine technique. Brax Tum was now making sounds that suggested he was either laughing hysterically or having a complete mental breakdown. This is insane. You're talking about impossible technologies, impossible tactics. Commander Brax Tum, isn't it? Captain Stone consulted a device on her other wrist. Says here you're the tactical officer. I'm curious, what's your assessment of our current situation? What? Tactical assessment. You're surrounded by an enemy force that has demonstrated superior technology and capability. Your weapons are disabled, your shields are down, and your crew is captured. What's your recommended course of action? Brax Tum stared at her for a long moment. Unconditional surrender. Excellent. See, I knew you weren't just another pretty face. Admiral, your tactical officer has just demonstrated more wisdom in 30 seconds than your entire intelligence division showed in planning this invasion. The countdown timer hit 9 minutes, and Captain Stone's expression grew more serious. Admiral, I need to be honest with you. This conversation is being broadcast live to every human military installation in the system. Right now there are about 12 million people watching you decide whether to surrender or find out what happens when you make humans really, really angry. 12 million. It's actually quite popular. We've turned it into a sort of game show. Will they or won't they submit to human superiority? The betting pools are getting quite large. Vex Thara felt his legs give out completely as he collapsed into his command chair. This is a game show. Well, technically it's a military operation that we've turned into entertainment. We find that public involvement helps with morale. Plus, the comedy value is priceless. Do you know how many species have claimed humans were just a myth? 17, not counting you. 17? 17, and every single one of them is now contributing members of human society. The Zephyrians make excellent engineers, the Praxians are natural miners, and the Corthans have become surprisingly good at customer service. Customer service? They have very soothing voices, perfect for handling complaints. It's all about finding the right fit for everyone's talents. The countdown timer hit 8 minutes, and somewhere in the distance, Vex Thara could hear the sound of his crew being efficiently rounded up by what sounded like a very small number of humans having casual conversations about the weather. Admiral, Captain Stone said, her voice becoming more gentle, I know this is difficult. You came here expecting to conquer a primitive species, and instead you've discovered that humans are very much not primitive. It's embarrassing. I get it. It's not just embarrassing, Vex Thara said quietly. It's career-ending, possibly life-ending, depending on how Supreme Commander Thane Drix reacts to this news. About that, Captain Stone said, consulting her wrist device again. I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that you won't have to worry about Supreme Commander Thane Drix's reaction. Why not? Because he's currently enjoying a nice cup of tea with Admiral Martinez on her flagship. Apparently, he decided that discretion was the better part of valor when his entire home fleet was disabled simultaneously. His entire home fleet? Oh yes, did I mention we have a small presence near your homeworld? Just a few ships. Nothing major, only about 50,000 of them. Vex Thara stared at her in horror. 50,000 ships. Give or take. We're not very good at sitting still, Admiral. When we heard about your invasion plans, we thought it might be wise to pay your people a visit. You know, to discuss the error of your ways. You invaded our homeworld. Invaded is such an ugly word. We prefer aggressively negotiated. Your people were very reasonable once we explained the situation. The countdown timer hit 7 minutes, and Captain Stone's expression grew more serious. Admiral, I need you to understand something. This isn't about conquest, it's about education. You attacked us because you thought we were weak. We're demonstrating that we're not weak so that you'll never make that mistake again. But why? Why not just destroy us? Because destroying you would be wasteful. You're intelligent beings with valuable skills and perspectives. We'd rather have you as allies than as corpses. But that requires you to understand that attempting to conquer humanity is not just impossible, it's suicidal. Vex Thara looked around his bridge at his terrified crew, at the human who had single-handedly captured his flagship, at the countdown timer that was steadily approaching 0. "What happens if we surrender?" he asked finally. "You get jobs. Good jobs, meaningful work. Full citizenship rights in the human commonwealth. Healthcare, education, retirement benefits. We're actually quite generous with our former enemies. And if we don't surrender?" Captain Stone's smile returned, but it was different now. Colder. "Then you get to experience the full creativity of human warfare. And Admiral, I promise you that's an experience you won't survive to regret." The countdown timer hit 6 minutes, and Vex Thara made his decision. "All fleet commanders," he said, activating his communication system. "This is Admiral Vex Thara. I am ordering the immediate and unconditional surrender of all Dominion forces. Lay down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "Excellent choice, Admiral," Captain Stone said, her cheerful demeanor returning instantly. "Welcome to the human commonwealth. I think you're going to love it here." "What happens now?" Vex Thara asked. Now you get to learn what humans are really like when we're not trying to kill you. Fair warning though, we're actually pretty weird. We keep small animals as companions, we cry at movies, and we have an inexplicable obsession with putting cheese on everything. Cheese? Dairy product. You'll love it, or hate it. There's really no middle ground with cheese. As the boarding operations continued throughout the fleet, Admiral Vex Thara found himself in the strange position of being a prisoner who was being treated better than he'd treated his own crew half the time. The humans were efficient, professional, and surprisingly polite. "Captain Stone," he said as she prepared to leave the bridge, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Admiral." "How long have you been expecting us?" "It's about 3 years. We've been monitoring your communications, tracking your fleet movements, and preparing for this invasion since you first started planning it." 3 years? Vex Thara's voice was barely a whisper. "You've known for 3 years?" "Admiral, we've been expecting someone like you for about 50 years. You're not the first species to think humans are just a myth, and you probably won't be the last. But each time it happens, we get a little better at handling it peacefully." "Peacefully?" "This was peaceful, Admiral. No one died. No ships were destroyed. No planets were glassed. Just a friendly demonstration of superior capability, followed by a reasonable job offer. In the old days, we would have turned your entire fleet into expanding clouds of superheated plasma." "The old days?" "About 10 years ago. We've mellowed considerably since then. These days we prefer to solve problems with conversation, negotiation, and the occasional display of overwhelming technological superiority." As Captain Stone left the bridge, Admiral Vex Thara sat in his command chair and contemplated the rapidly changing nature of his reality. He'd come to conquer a myth and instead discovered that the real myth was his own species' superiority. 3 months later, Admiral Vex Thara was managing a mining operation in the asteroid belt, working alongside the former crew of the hegemony of Praxis. The work was honest, the pay was good, and the benefits package was better than anything he'd ever received in the Dominion military. He'd also discovered that humans were right about cheese. There really was no middle ground. But as he watched human ships coming and going from the mining station, carrying former enemies who had become productive citizens, he realized something important. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They'd shown them a better way to live. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because it meant that humans really were just a myth. The myth of a species so confident in their own strength that they could afford to be merciful. The myth of a people so secure in their own superiority that they preferred to make friends rather than corpses. The myth of a civilization that had learned to win wars without fighting them. Admiral Vex Thara took a bite of his grilled cheese sandwich and smiled. It was, he had to admit, pretty good cheese.